Hey Bradley.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you? Good. Maybe this is my first week of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How was your Happy New Year?
Oh, that was good. They didn't allow us to go outside because they had restrictions in the campus, so I just was in my room and just fell asleep after that. It was nothing much.
Yeah. At least you're staying safe.
Kind of, yes.
Well, that's good. Glad to hear that your year is, going along so far.
It's kind of. I'm actually so busy with the data collection stuff because, for a patient, it takes around 2 weeks data collection, with each day sitting for around 5 hours at a stretch. It's so much massive, and my coordinator is out of station, so I had to pull the strings. It's quite intense right now, and every day's data I need to clean it then and there, and stack it up. So I'm having my examinations coming this week, which will be mostly practicals. So yes, it's going good. It's going so tightly packed.
Well, good luck. Yeah.
Thank you.
Who is here besides Ash?
Oh, it's me, Anson.
Oh. Hi, how are you?
It's been a pretty okay time. Lots of personal and medical things going on, but overall pretty good. Had a good holiday. Semester's interesting. School just started.
Oh yeah, this week?
Yep.
Good. I mean, what are you taking?
I'm taking a capstone CS course and then basically 3 upper level data analysis / science courses.
Good. Well, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Jesse, I guess, is here. The J.
Hey, yes, it's me. I'll be able to say more later, but are we just doing introductions now?
Well, I just wanted to catch up on what people are up to for the new year. I don't know. Yeah.
I'm kind of emerging from my. I like how the GitHub tracks your stuff.
Yeah.
I realized I hadn't really done anything for 5 weeks, and that's the first time, I think, in a year there's just this period of dead space. So it was probably good, but I'm really looking forward to returning to full engagement because I've had various messages to Bradley about this recently, but I appreciate the lab and the environment that we have here to do a lot of stuff, and I'll get into this later, but I looked at the papers and they're exciting, and that we're going to be submitting the manuscripts, I guess I should say, is the term, but yeah, it's mostly just coming out of this period of, obviously the United States has been kind of a strange place lately overall, but I've been doing my own family stuff, my own personal stuff, and I feel like it's hard to believe that January is half over in some ways, but here we are, and I really look forward to what's ahead. That's my general feeling about it.
Good. Yeah, so welcome again, Ashkan and Anson. This is your first meeting of the year. I hope you're having a good new year. We talked just a couple minutes ago. We had a meeting last week. If you want to catch up on that, it's on YouTube. We basically I think it was Jesse and I can't remember if we had anyone else. I we had one other person, and we talked about planning for the new year. So we're going to be a lot of things going on in the new year in the group. I'd like to retain some of the momentum that we've seen over the last year. And I think also there's another, like 2 weeks before that, I had a summary of 2020. So that's like a little slideshow I put together, just kind of going through everything in 2020, and it's amazing when you reflect how much you actually have accomplished. And I recommend everyone do that, by the way, if you're just a student, just doing your own thing, and you want to put together what you want to feel inspired. You can put together a retrospective of your accomplishments, but it also helps you reflect on where to go for the future. So, you were going to say something, Jesse?
Oh, just that as Angela was here last week, and she was checking some of her projects, and she mentioned a few, but also she was excited about like some of the ethics and society stuff that I mentioned too. So yeah, and I know she's busy with stuff, but I think in a few more weeks she might be more active here. So.
I forgot about Angela was here, and she was excited to be here, and also Suniti has contacted me on Slack, and she's been busy, but she's also interested in joining in the new year. So we have it, and Rashab also has expressed interest in attending the meetings, sporadically when he can. So we'll be seeing those faces around again. So I think it'll be a fun year. We'll have a lot of
and just like a reminder for people who might be watching or like checking out the lab or whatever, not everybody in the lab is always hearing the videos. Some people just can't make it at the time or whatever. So if you can't make this time, that's fine. We're pretty used to dealing with like this. People being in different time zones, let's say.
Asynchronous.
But like Rishab's a very active part of the lab, even though he's not always here in these videos. But like I hear from him every week, multiple times a week usually. So that's just pointing that out because I think sometimes like if I wasn't used to it, kind of like 11 o'clock mornings are like a strange time to be doing like cool stuff like this. But there's ways to make it work. So just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, and like I don't know. I haven't really explored doing things at other times. I mean, this meeting is here because it's easy, like to get if you're working during the week or going to school. It's not like you don't have to make time in your schedule. But it's we'll do some things like off time, at other times, sometimes occasionally, like we'll meet during the week, like, another time of the week for other types of meetings, like organizational meetings. So,
and as a slight allusion to that, I'm probably going to host a few basically even just open work sessions, like just study sessions or co-working sessions. It doesn't have to be like it's lab related because I'm probably doing lab stuff during them, but it doesn't have to be at the same time. So like there's gonna be some events like that, and also like my own, like in the Cognition futures there's still there's still the Cognition study group, which is going to be becoming more active again than sort of winter break hiatus. So I mean, those are actual things too that are happening, and will be happening more so as the year settles in. So, just mentioning that.
Yeah, I look forward to that actually, and that's definitely something that we can like sponsor. Like by sponsor, I mean like we can like create a Jitsi instance and record it and like have it, in the pantheon of things that we have in the lab so that it's advertised, and we can follow up on very more specific topical area because this meeting is usually like always like so many different things that we kind of go back and forth between, because we do a lot of different things here, so it should be yeah. So well, before I get into the next thing, do Ashk and Anson, do you have anything to add, or?
I'm just looking forward to joining you guys with the session which you said about. I like to work in that because it's totally not exactly my area of expertise, and I just want to learn a lot of things from that. So I guess I'll join sometime.
Yeah, you're welcome to join in, and I mean, well, most of the updates will be like on Slack and on by email, so that if we have something planned and people have been away from Slack for a while, or we can get people, make sure that they're aware of it. So, Anson, do you have any other thoughts?
This semester will be kind of machine learning oriented-ish. Like, I actually am taking the machine learning course, and also the project that I'm doing, like a natural language processing project as one of my final capstone courses in a group project.
Good. Sounds good. Good luck with that. Yeah, it's very hot right now in the machine learning area. So yeah, it should be fun to see what I know people like to engage in all different types of like data analysis. It's always fun to see the student projects because you get to see what people come up with given the latitude of a class project. But you should keep us posted on that.
Yeah, I'm still interested in continuing to research A-Life, though I definitely have a really hectic schedule right now.
Yeah. Well, there's the A-Life conference coming up this summer, and we do plan to submit something for that. So, I'll keep you posted on that. This year, it's I think the conference theme is like robots. It's so that I don't know if you know about the history of like robotics, but there's this science fiction story called RUR or something like that. And this year's theme, because it's being held sort of a hybrid virtual and physical conference in Europe, in Prague. And this RUR short story took place, or was written by a Czech person. And so there's this I think it's like an anniversary of that story or something, and so the whole theme is about like some retro robotic theme. I'm not sure exactly yet because they haven't. I mean, they're just planning it, but it should be an interesting thing, to see. And so, I mean, that kind of goes to the history of AI and A-Life, and we'll talk more about that later because we did find some things this week that are interesting in that area. So.
That does sound very interesting. I'll definitely look into it, and hopefully help with the product to submit and attend.
Yeah, it sounds good. So let's see, Jesse. You're there. You have two instances, I see. You're muted though.
Yeah, I'm doing a hybrid setup. I could actually show myself on camera for a bit, but it's just making web presence work in a makeshift way.
Okay. I was gonna do a few things first, and then if you want to do something, I don't know what you have to talk about today, but I was gonna go through some of the. I was going to go through the spreadsheet for people, for Ashk and Anson and other people watching. So why don't we,
Yeah, that's plenty fine. I don't really have any like major presentations today.
Okay.
I would just mostly just follow up on. I was looking over the manuscripts, so I was just gonna kind of go off of that, and nothing major in a lab manager sense either. I've been doing some stuff, but I might have a slight discussion about that, but I don't really have like I don't have a large presentation to give today of any kind.
Okay. All right, well, I'll share my screen here. So for everyone, I talked about this a little bit last week. So what I've done for this year, and this is the year like we can get some real work done, because it's like we know that like last year we didn't know about the pandemic and everything was up in the air a number of times, and so it was a lot of shifting. This year we have a little bit clearer vision of what's going on. So plus this group has been, I think, gelled for a little bit longer, so we've been talking about a lot of themes. And so this is the submissions for papers and conferences for this year. Let me put the link in the chat so that you can get access to it. And I think you should be able to access it freely. If not, ask for the permissions. Anyone with the link should be able to get it. So this is just a list of things that we're working on, or venues that we've identified, and we're listing them out. And the reason we're doing this is because we want to make sure that we know all the deadlines, so that we can look at this thing maybe weekly, or even like if you want to go look at it and think, what are the deadlines coming up? You can just go to this list and see. So we have 27 things on the list, and some of them are just kind of like inquiries. Some of them are we've already submitted. So let's see, this one here, the Cyber Cafe Scientifique, that was already past that deadline. We submitted, so that's why it's color coded. But we haven't heard anything back yet. Now, this one here, the DevoLearn Flash Talk, this is something from the DevoWorm group. So I've actually combined our group with the DevoWorm stuff, which is another group that I'm involved in, but we have like some overlap. But in this case, we submitted a Flash Talk to the OSF Virtual Conference for Online Education. And so this is a virtual conference that is going to be happening in February. And it was accepted to that, so I put a check mark there. And this is a link to the agenda, I think. And I may have to update it. And then, so if you want to know more about that submission, you go to that link. And then this is time and date, actually. Let's see. Oh, this one actually is, I think it's February 7 or something like that, at like 12 or at 1 p.m. Eastern time in the U.S. And so now we have a time for that Flash Talk. We can put in columns like, what's expected of the deliverable. So we might put deliverable, and it might be like it's a Flash Talk, so it might be 10-minute talk or 5-minute talk. I can't remember what the timing is, but we can put those details in here so we all know what's been submitted, what's upcoming, what's expected of us by a certain time. So we have all that in there. Now, there are a bunch of things coming up, of course, and there are a lot of deadlines early in the year, and I think that's just because if they want to have it like in the summer, they all kind of do the submissions like now to March. So we have the things like the OHBM Twitter conference, which is something that we did last year. And this is, I don't know what the deadline on that is. I think it's opening soon, but they'll update the website. And then we have to decide what we want to submit. We'll submit something on developmental AI. The Twitter conference is just like something where you have, I think, 5 minutes and you craft like 5 tweets, and you can attach an image. So the image could be like, a figure. And we did this last year for the development of Bratenberg vehicles, and it worked out pretty well. So that'll be an easy one, actually, I think. And so that's on deadline. This one here, the Psych workshop on emergent interaction, that's one of the ones that I just put a draft up on Slack the other day, and I think Anson and Jesse are co-authors on that so far. Although, other people can join in, and a criterion for authorship is easy. You just simply, you add something to the paper, you do some editing, maybe you improve a figure or make a figure, and you can get an authorship credit. So we'll talk about this paper later, but this is due January 31st. And then these are the links. This is the link to the template, which I haven't put the paper into yet, but this is where it's going to live when I get the template done. And then this is the workshop website. So this is emergent interaction, and we'll revisit this in a minute. But this is going to be January 31st deadline, so it's coming up. We have things like Evolution 2021, or Artificial Life 2021, which the deadline for that is March 7th. And again, this is the link to the, so it's this robot100.cz, so their theme is a retro robotic theme. And so, but the deadline for that is like an 8-page paper, and it's due in March. So I think we have, maybe the thing we submitted to Baby Minds we can submit here. That might be a good submission. But we could also submit something from Cog Futures as well, and that's because they do have a track on history and philosophy, and so that's something that we can talk about. 8 pages, it seems like a lot, but if you're going to be putting together, a largely a narrative submission, it's actually not as much as you'd think. So I think if we wanted to do something with Cog Futures, we could just write up like the vision, maybe some details about what we might expect to do with the group, maybe some findings. There's a way to do this that's, I think, pretty pretty good. I think it will fill like 10 pages, which goes down to 8 pages in their template, and then is something that's really substantive. So, but I think it's a good opportunity to advance the Cog Futures idea, and so that's one thing we can do. There's also CSV Conf, which is the 6th version of this conference, and this is now they just declared that this is on for this year, and it's virtual. So this is the link to CSV Conf. This is the I think this is the Google Docs form for submissions. I'm not really sure, but the deadline for that is February 28th, and the deliverable on the deadline is an abstract. It's like 400 words or something like that, so it's not so bad. I've been thinking about this as well. So last year Jesse and I presented on epistemological directories, which if you haven't seen that, if you haven't heard of that project, I believe that I have a link on the website to the talk, or I can send to you. If not, we have a YouTube recording of the talk and the slides. So if you're interested in that, I can send you the information. Last year was an overview of of epistemological directories, like what it is and how we've used it. And Jesse and I were working on that last year in many different forms, so that all made it into that talk. Since then, though, we've done a lot of stuff that is sort of derivative of that, and I was thinking of putting that in the abstract. I have it. I wrote some notes down in a new abstract for this year, but I don't have it up right now. So we'll review that closer to the deadline and decide what we want to do with that. Right now we have a couple other deadlines to work on. So So this is the flash talk for DevoLearn. NeuroMatch 4 will be coming up eventually. We don't know what the deadline is, but that should be on the list. So when we find out when that is, we can fill that in. This is a case where we have an abstract that we were working on over the break, and this is with the DevoWorm group, Growth Form and the Theory of Deep Learning. And this is something that I was going to submit somewhere else, but didn't, because I didn't think it would be a good venue. You always have to evaluate the venue. You always have to think about, like, what their sort of, first of all, if it has a lot of, if the acceptance rate is very selective or not, and then you have to think about, like, whether it's a good audience for the thing you're trying to do. So just as a point on sort of selecting things to submit to, that's what you really you have to evaluate. But this is another abstract. This is something that we might be submitting to the annual SciAm meeting, which is applied math. This is the link to the conference website. The deadline, I think, is February 3rd. So that may be open now, so we could probably just submit that. But I'll look into that later. This, going back here, we have another paper that's sort of already been written, but is needing to be updated and revised. So it's not something anyone in this group is involved with. But this is an idea. This is another idea that hasn't really gone anywhere, but it may be looking for a venue. And again, if we have, like, journal articles that we want to, like, if there's something you think might go into a journal, the venue can be journal, and the deadline can be whenever we get it done and submitted. So, I mean, that's a possibility too. If I know Rashab had mentioned maybe submitting to journals more this year, and certainly that's a good idea. But I think we can also put it on this list. So if you have a journal in mind, or an opportunity, like a special issue of a journal, you can list it here as well. What else? So this, again, another idea here. So there's another thing I ran across this week. I think it was Jesse who put it in the Slack. Embodied Multimodal Learning Workshop, which is an ICLR workshop. So this is like the NeurIPS workshop, but it's a different machine learning conference. The deadline for this is March 1. Now, what makes this a nice opportunity is that this requires a 2 to 4 page extended abstract. So it's kind of like what we did for the Baby Minds workshop, where it was a little bit longer. But, I think you can get, like, 2 to 4 pages is not that long. It seems to be a little bit less of a barrier than, say, like, a full paper for a conference like this. But there are a number of things we can explore for this. We could write something about metabrain models, some of the stuff from some of the talks, like viewpoint networks, or other ideas that, if you think it might be suitable, we can work it into a short abstract. And 2 to 4 pages isn't very much, but it is, the venue is something. So we should try for it anyways. Then there's the Envision Conference, which is something that Jesse was going to check back into. I'm not sure what the deadlines are on that. Do you have an update on that, Jesse?
I know that they are fleshing out their speakers now. I know that Anson and Angela would know who Phil Torres is, but I know he'll be speaking there this year. This is a reminder for me too. You'll have to reach out to them for what I might want to present or share there, or like, offer. I need to approach them and kind of say, hey, would you like, there are a number of things that might fit from the lab that we could present there or talk about there too, or offer, like, I don't know, a little bit of a. They've had various things that are sort of like breakout rooms or career fairs or many different ways that we could participate in that event. So I don't know yet what, but I will I should reach out to them this weekend and catch up with them about that. So.
Yeah, please do. We can work towards the deadline there.
Yeah. I really like the. I might share my screen about the same topic.
Okay. Well, why don't I finish going through this list and then you can share.
Okay, sure.
And so I mean that sounds good. I definitely think that I always like the lab summaries and things like that because it does advertise well for the operational stuff. So that's always important. So let's see. Let me go back and finish up this list, and then we'll go on to the. You can share your screen. Also, if you could pull up the those cards that we were working on too.
Yeah.
For the projects. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let me finish. So that's Envision, and then this is a Cyber Cafe Scientifique thing. So this is something we submitted before the holiday. This is another operations thing, constructing distributed collaborative science. So this is something that we would, I think the format is where we have a bunch of our people coming in and maybe people from outside, and we have a discussion about this topic. But we haven't heard back from them yet, so I don't know what the status of that is. But again, when we get the status, we'll put it in here, report it, and then work towards the finished thing. So then there's this, and so I mentioned Metabrains up here somewhere, but I put it here because it's something that maybe we'll do something with. But again, this has no venue. So it's we have things that have no venue that are ideas we might want to work on. And then the idea is that if we find a venue that might be appropriate, we can match it to that venue. Or sometimes we find a venue where we don't know what we want yet. So that's down here with the International C. elegans Conference, which is, I think, more a DevoWorm thing, but it has a deadline of March 25th. It's just an abstract, but we need to match that to something. And so we will probably do that. And so going quickly through this, then there's Neuromatch Academy. We need a project. Maybe we'll do the same project again, but update it. Google Summer of Code, that's actually something that's been submitted. Wait a minute. So this is something through DevoWorm this year. I'm not submitting anything through this lab. But we have a couple of submissions through our DevoWorm group, and so you can view them here. That's actually already been submitted as descriptions. So that's let me actually color code that. So I don't know what we're going to color code it. Probably this. Okay. The bacillary non-neuronal cognition. So that's the presentation that we did. Actually, we talked about it in this group a bit. This is a paper, though, that we owe, this Mathematics of Diatoms collection, and the deadline is April 30th, so that's a ways off. That has to be we have to start working on that, but I don't know when exactly. It always happens that you do it sort of up against the deadline, so sometimes those sorts of things are unavoidable. We have a couple papers for NERCS Virtual, which is this is Northeastern, by Northeastern they mean Northeastern United States Complexity Conference. And so this is another virtual event this year. They have a full paper deadline of February 1 and a March 1 deadline for extended abstract. And so I've actually pulled two papers out of Deep Freeze for this. This cellular reprogramming in bursts and phases, which I've not shared with the group at all, but I'll probably submit that. And then this Lagrangian coherent structures may describe evolvable frontiers. That's something that I think Jesse's looked at. I put it in one of the channels on Slack. So that's something, if you're interested in looking at that and seeing what that's about. That's in the, I think I put everything in the conference, one of the conference channels.
Yeah, conference materials.
Conference materials. So again, this is something that can be submitted to. This is something Jesse might be particularly interested in attending, because this is sort of like Boston and New York State and in that region.
Yeah, I did. I don't know if you're gonna talk about any of those manuscripts later or not, but I did look a little bit at the Lagrangian one, and it was good for me because I've been trying to kind of wrap my head around that ever since I started looking at the contextual geometric structures.
Yeah.
So I probably will be. I think I started already commenting on that a little bit actually in the document, so I'll follow up with that for sure.
Yeah, and yeah, please, if anyone else wants to, feel free to join in the document. Again, you just go to the channel and they're listed there, and So back to the list. There's this scientific understanding and representation, and I think that's more of a philosophical venue. It's, I think, a workshop or a conference. A deadline there is February 15th. That's a 300 to 500 word abstract. And this is the link here. Again, this is like, when you're planning for these deadlines, think about like what's required. So like, we want to submit something by February 1. Well, we want to make sure that we have something that's maybe attainable, or that we have. If we have something that's it requires a full paper, then you probably have to either get busy right now getting it together, or find something that you have that is suitable maybe. For something like this, we can generate a abstract de novo, and it's not too hard. I would suggest actually that Anson and Jesse look into this if you're interested in, it looks like more of a philosophical bent. And it's probably a pretty easy submission to make. Doesn't require much to sort of.
Which one are you talking about?
The scientific understanding and representation. And this is the link here. Let me put it in the chat. I don't know, I can't make the copy here for some reason, but let's do this. Put it in the chat, and it's so it looks like something like with cognitive representations and all this, and so that's, I don't know, that might be something that's highly relevant, or maybe not at all, but I thought it was probably something that we'd have an interest in here. So that's another one. Then CogSci 21 is coming up, and the deadline for papers for this is February 3rd. So this is another very short deadline. But this, what was that ooh for?
That's a short deadline. Yeah, I forgot that it was that close.
Yeah. So this is another thing like, so this is another paper that I have prepared and put in the channel. This one's on Gibsonian information. So,
yeah, I think I saw that. That's in the channel, right? You said.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So we'll look at these papers later on in the meeting, but I just wanted to make all these deadlines, kind of lay them out. And then again, we talked maybe a little bit about a cognition futures contribution, but I don't know. The deadline's pretty close, so it's not really clear. And I don't know what the maybe there's like a extended abstract track. I'm not really sure, but you might check for that and check the deadline on that in case there's some other opportunity, because they always want like a 6-page paper or something, but that's sometimes maybe more than you have room for in your life, or based on the topic, maybe if it's not as developed as you would like. So they sometimes have these smaller submission options. So I would check into that, but that's a short deadline. And again, we have like Baby Minds follow-up, which doesn't have a venue, but of course maybe we'll be doing it in Artificial Life or something like that. Shared Representations, that was the other paper we submitted to the NeuroSim workshops. That was the Shared Visual Representations, actually, follow-up. So it was submitted to the Shared Visual Representations conference or workshop. And again, it doesn't have a target venue right now, but and then there are open conferences, so the International C. elegans Conference, CompoNet 2021, which is it's a network science workshop. So if you're interested in network science, and I know we mentioned that, I think Anson said his friend was into network science. That's another opportunity. We don't have the submission deadline yet because they're getting their site up and running, but and then ICML 2021, which is, that's where we have January 28 you submit an abstract, and then February 4 you submit a whole paper. So that's another very short deadline. And this is a weird system, but apparently you submit the abstract on the 28th and then the paper on the 4th. And I'm not really sure why they do that, but that's the way they do it. So it's, it's again, I think it's one of these conference formats, so it's like 6 to 8 pages. And the only thing I can think of that we might have for that is this DevoLearn paper that we were working on in the other group. And it's just like basically a description of the DevoLearn platform and all that. So I might be able to get that together because that's already been worked on pretty thoroughly. But yeah, that's our group so far of submissions, or our group of deadlines and possible submissions. So again, if you have like anything you think of that's suitable for the list, please add it or let me know and I can add it, or make a note on the spreadsheet in terms of like, if you think you might want to submit something, or if there's maybe something we can work with, an idea. Just let me know. It's pretty open. But the idea here is just to make sure that we make deadlines and don't miss deadlines, because that's something that you can easily miss if you're not monitoring them.
Definitely.
So, Ashkan or Anson, do you have any questions or comments on that?
So that looks really good. I feel like I just join anything that kind of suits me or on my, my area of interest or area of my work.
Is there anything?
It seems really nice to see a lot of conference as such. Yeah, maybe I should do one which makes me fit in my sector also, and do a list of all these things so it makes me engaging, right?
Yeah, I think that's we have again, if you have something in mind, you can put it on the list and we can talk about doing a submission. I'd encourage, if you have something like more, because I don't have access to every possible venue and deadline. So if you find something, please add it.
Sure, yes, I'll try to do it.
The link to conferences definitely looks interesting. I'll definitely take a look at the Excel sheet later and pick out which ones seem most relevant for me.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, Jesse, do you wanted to present your screen?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm doing a bit of a workaround here. Let's go. I have number one. I have 3 events I want to show quickly. I did request access to put to the submissions and papers spreadsheet, and also to the project summary Google slide thing
the cards.
Oh, right.
I could edit that last week, but now I can't.
I may have changed the permissions on it. Sorry.
That's fine.
But I'll get
just mention those things now. And also, where to go? I'll start with this stuff here. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so you can see my screen, I take it?
Yeah.
One thing that I might try to do is do this. Just have an integration somewhere in the spreadsheet where it automatically populates a calendar. And I've been looking at, sticking a sheet in a calendar in Google, basically. I haven't done it yet, but I think it would be not that hard to do. And you kind of just so that there's overlap, because I really like this view that here's a calendar that I've made, and this is just showing oral group and also my football team here apparently, Nebraska. We're doing terrible, but maybe by the time the pandemic's over, they'll be in good shape.
Yeah.
That means a long time, folks. Okay. Oral group. So I put some things here. Deadlines here, and this is the schedule view. Obviously, you can do like month or whatever, but this is kind of a nice view just to have this, and also have a calendar, so that way, if you wanted to have this on your whatever, it could just be there. This is totally almost aesthetic level. Like, this is not really functional necessarily, but just having this boom, 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 boom was kind of nice. So, if you're interested in this calendar, I will be working on it this week, and hopefully be able to do something like this. And I do like what we have going on here. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think this is, I really like this view because we could set this up. Like, this could be 2020, this whole year 2021, and you could have these deadlines, and then I think maybe even like making a separate table, or just separating a little bit like these potential things. Well, like having this clear view of the deadlines, I think is really important because it just helps you streamline what to focus on, and that's sort of the thing too. Like, to continue the discussion about, we've had some really good discussions the last couple of weeks about taking notes, and the ongoing discussion about going from twirly birds and things that are happening, things you read, articles you read, whatever, to outputs, and it's sort of like there's two things. There's like this perma flow of stuff coming at you. There's these events that are like these venues that you can put stuff into and put a paper or presentation, a talk, whatever, together for that. And also definitely really interested in like Rashab said, submitting to journals. I think is something I really like to do this semester, and I have some papers in the work for that I'll talk about some of the time. So you have this flow, you have these events, and then you have like these ongoing things. Like, I'm still managing my own project of like the Cognition future stuff. These kind of three different like energies about things that are going on. So figuring out ways to do that is sort of its own deal. I don't know. I imagine you wanted to talk about these project cards later, Bradley, or did you want me to just have these up in general?
Well, why don't you finish your going through what you were going to say, and then we can go into this in depth. So.
Okay. So, like I said, I'm working on this. This calendar view is here for those who want it. And there are a few things I wanted to really quickly go over that I will absolutely be submitting to. This is one that I mentioned, call for contributors for the AI Now. AI Now is actually something at NYU University, which is pretty cool. So I'll get into that in a second. I wanted to mention a local homebrewed New York celebration of women in computing presented virtually this year. I actually had submitted, and I was going to be on a panel there last year. I want to follow up with them to see if they still want to do it. I was going to do like kind of a career research panel, which is awesome. And I went to this I think 2 years or just 1 year. Well, I was going to go 2 years, but I went there in 2019. I actually presented with Valeria there. I presented one of our ethics and bias posters. But this is kind of this is affiliated with my University of Albany, and there's a lot of it's a really good conference, so I want to support them. See, the submissions are opening up as of yesterday, so there's plenty of time to submit. I don't know when the deadline is, but you have a few weeks for sure. So that's that, and also Envision. This is their website, and it doesn't have their updated information yet, but I believe there will be a similar theme for 2021. Their event, I believe, is in April, and basically, I would just say reach out to me in Slack or on Twitter or whatever. Reach out to me about this because this is really if you don't know anything about it, I would encourage you to look into it. It's a really great welcoming community. A lot of really, really interesting people come together and talk about stuff here. Prudence in development and use of technology across sectors and disciplines. They're very interested in society, modern, like innovations in technology, and ethics, and sort of where things are going. It's a really, I can't emphasize how great this going there has been for me. It will be virtual again this year, but honestly, I'm going to try to go to this conference as long as I possibly can. So check it out this year. But I know this is a long ways away, but literally, if you're watching this, whoever you are, and you want to go to this next year in person, if that's doable and the world isn't, destroyed by then, I'll probably be going, and I will be happy to talk to you about it because this is a really good thing that's going on here. So that's my plug for that, and then I'll quickly go back to this one. I wish I had the tweet. Actually, I do have it, I think. Here. Or not. Well, that's good enough. Yeah, this works. Essentially, they're looking for a call for submission. They're launching a project, AI Now, looking at something called New AI Lexicon involving critical perspectives and framework currently absent from Western corporate-dominated AI ethics discourse thread. And in so many words, it's going to be a place where you can come and bring some views about things. This is on their Medium page. This is also an interesting example for the lab members. You can put a call for contributors on Medium. I think this is a good example. This is specifically looking for any narratives about things kind of expansion inclusive in AI discussion. And this fits really well with what I've been talking about regarding the AI ethics or the ethics in society team that I'm kind of. I don't know how formal it will be, but there's a lot of demand in sort of people who've been in a group or worked in a group or done adjacent stuff. So I'm definitely going to put something together with this. And if you're interested, let me know. There's a few other people. There's Angela's kind of interested. Valeria's kind of interested. So we'll see what happens in that sense. But I will be. I forget when the deadline for this is. But it's a few short essays that you can taking up a concept, metaphor, or keyword along which critical AI thinking is currently undertaking. So, there's a lot of different approaches here. There's definitely a call out to, like the Global South and other perspectives that are, I'd like to see this. I think this is a very. I'm a big fan of things like this. So yes, and I don't know if I saw a specific date, but I'll follow up on the date for that. But this is something that's going to be happening, and I'll add all these to our spreadsheet here and put them in the calendar view or whatever. But those are the few things that I wanted to mention that kind of came up this week. Bradly mentioned some other things that came up this week. The ICLR or the ICML one that came up this week. Yeah. So this one. Yeah, that's ICLR. Okay. So that's kind of my update for that. I'll let that be. But a few events are upcoming. New York Celebration of Open Computing is really open to a lot of things. It is somewhat it's very nebulous, but it's kind of open towards, you can apply as not, you don't have to be able to apply, of course. But it's a very it's a very good environment and very opening towards anything that's kind of generally computational and inclusive. So whatever it doesn't. I encourage anyone who is looking to celebrate that, or looking for anything computational based what they want to present, might be a good outlet to do that. It's a small conference, but it's still it's sponsored by ACM, which is like a major computing machinery. So it's a small conference here in New York, upstate New York, generally speaking. But it's a legitimate event. So yeah.
Do we have any other comments, Anson or Ashk?
Not in particular right now. I think that I think I'd probably be interested in Envision again. I think I'd take a little more of a close look at the other conferences mentioned.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. That's,
I did a superficial gaze before in the Envision thing, but then it's right. I should look into it sometimes more. It seems really interesting.
yeah. Looks very interesting. Be sure to put the deadlines on the sheet.
Yeah.
And then we should again if we want to solicit people to contribute to something, maybe like the Women in Computing conference, we might put that in the Slack and advertise internally, so people who are in the channel, if you do an @channel, you can broadcast everyone in the channel, so it brings it to their attention. Maybe solicit do you have anything that might be suitable for this? It's not, I don't know what people are doing off outside of the lab Slack and the meetings. I mean, they may have things that would be appropriate for this, but they don't, it isn't something that they're prepared. Maybe they want to submit it somewhere, but they don't really know, they don't really have it together, or they don't really have a venue in mind. And that often happens with things that you prepare, you write, you do research, you run subjects in an experiment or something, and you say, well, I don't know where to put this. And so then that's why we're generating all these different options for submitting things, because you don't know, oftentimes, even I've had things where I just don't know where to submit it. And that's something I'm trying to avoid as much as possible. So yeah, that's good, and let's keep that updated, and we'll be revisiting this once every week from here on out. And just when we hit a deadline, we'll cross out the thing, or we'll wait for the result to come in. We'll update it as we go along. So the first round of deadlines are coming up in the next 2 or 3 weeks, as you saw from the list. Why don't we do the project cards next?
Okay, do you want me to show that?
Yeah, let's go over those. let's review those, and you can share your screen. Yeah. So why don't we start from the first one? I know there's nothing on the first one, but... Okay, so we have a present. All right. So this is blank. Let's go to the next one. I didn't realize there was nothing on it.
Blank. Here we go.
Okay, so this is the building epistemological directories card. And this is like, so each one has an idea on it. I have the blank template I just showed. Then this one has, this is for an actual project. So this one describes the project. This is, we're looking for someone to build a set of directories, annotated bibliographies, etc. The basic structure of an ED includes a documentation for specific topics, visualizations, key equations and methodologies, archives of data sets and key findings. And then you would be building on the concept, unifying a number of topics in the lab. And so this would be like, then the deliverable, which is the next box, is where you do things in the project. And then there's a link to the team and the venue that we might submit to, or where you can find out more, which is the CSV Conf. And so, I mean, so I guess the question is what do we need to do to make this public?
Make which public?
So, okay, so I guess the point of these cards is to make this public, advertise.
Okay.
Yeah.
In this case, I mean, this could easily be. I think this one's fairly complete. Like this could be put on like a Medium post or something. It seems like, I don't know. Do you think anything else needs to? Maybe what I would say is like. Maybe a slightly more direct saying, here's what you could do, or here's what we're looking for from you. But I mean, I don't know if that's, it's kind of covered in the paragraphs. So
Yeah, actually, now that I look at it, we might put a link to
our past presentation.
yeah, like the YouTube video for CSV5.
Yeah, that would probably be helpful too.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking at it. Yeah, I think that would work, and then they could see that, and it's a pretty short, or a relatively short overview of it, and then that gives them a pretty good idea. So now, if we did that, then what's the next step? What do we want to do in terms of making these things work for us? Like, do we want to put them up on Twitter or the website or the Medium?
Yeah, whatever. We'll need some, public-facing thing, whether it's Medium or on the website or something. We'll need to be some, web URL that they can go to for it, for sure. And then promoting that on social media or in our networks of some sort. Internally and externally, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, we should advertise both internally and externally. So internally would be the probably Slack, I would imagine.
This is Slack, or maybe it's in the emails.
Yeah. All right. And then what's the next one? Let's see.
Next slide is Metabrains.
Good. This looks, yeah, very good. We don't have anything like a presentation on it yet, so this looks good. This is, again, lists the team, the deliverable, the description of the project, and the idea. So I think that's, and then like I guess like what we could do is have this card, and maybe put it on the website as a like an image file, and then like have like a description, maybe like contact information above and below. Or if we do like a Twitter post, we'll put like the contact information in that, or how do you join the community or something like that.
Yeah, some kind of an intake call to action thing, like if you're interested to do this specific thing, whether that's email. We can make like a generalized Google form of like, hey, I saw this thing, I was interested in this, power project or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, what's the next one? Reconstructing Cybernetics. Now, this is something that we don't have a venue for, but I think we can probably I'll put that in later. I'm not sure what the venue is, actually.
It could fit with many of the things that we're looking at, but yeah.
Yeah. I just want to make some notes to myself on this. So yeah, the venue is to be determined. But the rest of it I think looks good. Do you think it looks good?
Yeah. I think the nebulous nature of this one, but I might add a little bit more of like I might add one or two like very structured suggestions, just so someone coming to this could say, okay, what would I do? They could see this as an option, but obviously it's not. I might add something to that in a deliverable, or like what you can do. I don't know if that should be, I don't know if that should be like its own box, like what you can do, or like I don't know. There's sort of like, I'm not sure personally if I haven't decided yet how much I want to, like, these cards are very good for like project, but I feel like part of me might also want to tailor a very specific, come be an intern, whatever you want to call it, during the spring semester in our lab, and focus on whatever project, and here is like, your expectations, like it's part because of like in my one of my things I do for other work that I do is like I manage many postings for like positions and jobs basically, and it's sort of, I think like what are your, in that sense, which is much more of like a personal specific role or internship or whatever job, you have your description of the project, you have your primary responsibilities. Maybe like minimum qualifications, which we don't have to list that out specifically here, but just primary responsibilities, minimum qualifications, and like preferences or whatever in the context of just those things. I think that might be overkill for something that we're doing here, but just coming from that point of view of like an expectation of that, I feel like if that's an angle to put some of the things in, that's what comes to my mind. So to kind of come back to the main point of like, I think having some, in this specific case for reconstructing cybernetics, maybe one or two very concrete specific things to do might be helpful, but also like I think it's important to. I don't want to blur lines on. Are we talking about the projects? Or are we talking about somebody seeing this and coming into a specific role? And how do we talk about that? Like if I'm just someone Like if I'm just let's say an undergraduate student comes across this somewhere and sees like this card, like, okay, what do I want to know, and it's sort of like, do we want to talk about the project or do we want to talk about someone's specific involvement, and how do we want to do that? So that I know I might have introduced more questions than I've answered for that, but that's sort of just what comes to mind, and I don't know what you'd like to do on that end for things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I get it. Like the idea of, what's the targeted contribution? Most like we could think of it as in terms of like GitHub issues. If we wanted to build like a GitHub issue for this, and maybe that's not the right way to think about it, but I guess that's probably something that people would expect. Like, how do I start? Because you can talk about it and say, "Oh, I'm interested in this. How do I start? How do I get into this thing?" So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how to actually do that. I think for the cards, though, I think we can do these cards. We can put them out, and I think like maybe start advertising, and then think about like how we might engage people. I think the important thing is to capture their imagination and get them into the system, and then once they're into the system, then we can like maybe say, okay, here's what you do. But we got to think about, I think, independently of these, what that pipeline's going to look like. But I think first step is getting these out and advertising. So why don't we go through the rest of these?
Yeah.
This is the education content streaming stack. This is something that I don't have a deliverable for right now, but that's something fill in. I thought I had something, but I didn't. But this is very similar. Next one. Developmental brain work vehicles is the same idea where we have the deliverable team idea. Next one. This is empty because we don't have anything really for it yet, but that's something we can talk about. I think Anson might have some ideas about this, but this is something we can sort of fill in. So not all of them, we don't have to do them all right now. We just, as we go along with these ideas, we might want to start a project. And so that's, again, it's just like a description of what the project would involve. This is innovation in open science. This is the deliverable, the team, the description. This is a team that we haven't talked about much in this group, but this is something that is open for people. Again, we advertise it, and we can maybe use hashtags or something, and people will get the word will get out, and we'll see. But we'll have these ready to go if the opportunity arises where we can advertise it.
Yeah, and there was some good discussion in the last couple of weeks about this in beta use and how that's something that's interesting in a application or like CV sense is being involved in these things. So that's something to come back to later.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh-oh. Yeah, I wanted to actually add more to this earlier in the meeting, but I couldn't because I didn't have access to it. Oops. So this should actually be much more filled out, but I'll be adding things here.
Okay.
My general recognition features is yeah, I think I can still find it. I'm gonna totally do this just because I probably can. Let's just go over here and say not really compose tweet. There was this Sam Gershwin remark that I have to bring up here. Also, this is really cool too. Now that I'm looking for, but like hashtag Cognition Futures. But like this is a really interesting thing here. Gary Marcus is very continuously pushing forward on the boundary stuff and kind of like, okay, what have we done? Where are we going with it? That's his rap and his jam. This is a funny picture. Actually, also applies to me. Turn to my unfinished manuscript it didn't like be done by last year, except that potentially being me. Where did it go? Oh, this is that tweet that I mentioned before. About the AI Now stuff. There we go. So there's some, and I think Bradly explained it as tongue in cheek. I think Bradly replied here too, which is cool. But different responses here of different natures. This is kind of funny, 50 to 40 BC before convolution, philosopher Turingus. There's I don't even know everything being referenced here, but there's a lot of but that's kind of the point too. Like there's a lot of things that are interesting here, and I like to interpret this as in what do I mean by justified cognition features here? I mean, maybe a little bit ironically, some of the first things I'm doing on the ban of cognition features is really trying to look back at what has been done already and kind of breaking it down into these categories, these groupings of prior to the 1950s, and what sort of happened each decade since the 50s, and how there's been different influences on what AI has been, cognitive science and linguistics, and the different funding patterns, and why, why was my cognitive science at my university really, really, really small, and what's the trajectory of all those things. So that's part of it too, and also kind of between this and the Gary Marcus tweet, and his general philosophy of push, what's the next decade in AI going to be, and so on. My cognition futures wrap is people are interested in trying to understand what has happened in a trajectory sense of the development of how we're talking about cognition. There's a really good thread here too. I think, I don't know exactly where it is. I won't look too much. But this is also interesting. Approach to cognition. This is John Cropper, who's part of the stuff. If you're interested in these kind of topics, all these tweets that I'm talking about, that's basically what we're doing with the Cognition Futures team. And also, the one by this was a good thread and kind of relates to the I Envision stuff too. But just looking at these kind of things here, and I'll go back to the slides, but deliverables will be quite a few. We already have some things on the docket that have happened. We've had some presentations at the NeuroMatch events. There's been some informal presentations. There's also, you could be involved with the Cognition Study Group, which is kind of it's on hiatus basically, but regular meetings discussing these topics. There are some bigger papers in the work as well. I'm really set on setting some things out to be hopefully accepted by some journals this year, and so on and so forth. So I'll leave it at that. We can move to the next thing, which is also Ethics in Society. But basically, just see for Ethics in Society, I would just return to this. Like if you're interested in this kind of a thing, we're going to be doing some work on that. But I've already talked about that, so I'll let it be.
Well, that's good. Thank you, Jesse. Anson, did you have any comments on that?
Nice right now.
Okay. Yeah, so Jesse, why don't you fill those cards out? And I think for those two projects, I think it'd be good to kind of cover some of the planned media that you have around it. Like you want to do the discussion groups, and that would be like, something that you could get someone to help you with, as well as the intellectual development. So I would definitely mention those in that. Plus, if you want to do things on Twitter, like we're all about technological innovation, as you know. So we want to do we want to have maybe some things that some opportunities that someone coming into the group could latch onto that would be, develop both the sort of the intellectual development, but also, maybe like a Twitter presence, or like some online talk, or even like just a Medium, a regular Medium post that you might put out on the topic. So we haven't really planned out too much of the Medium posts, but definitely I think that would be a good opportunity to have like a regular program content on the Medium. We'd have a series.
Yeah, and like I think I totally agree, and like even for like I think I'm gonna have to sit down and probably talk with you, Bradley, about how you'd want this to be for like the I don't know what to call it, ethics and society team, whatever. But like there's actually, in one sense, that team is actually more developed than the Cognition Futures one, if you include like the stuff that I've been doing somewhat outside of the lab. But like there's actually their presentations. There are physical posters that have been published and presented in the scope of that team, and that's that's a cool thing. And there's a lot of resources there. So kind of just putting that out will be cool. And I think having a regular Medium blog post on basically, I don't know if I want to make them equivalent in the sense of how I'm talking about them or my effort in them, but like a regular update from Cognition Futures and a regular update from the other team in some form. Maybe not. Maybe Cognition Futures is a little bit more prominent because of reasons. But yeah, regular content and those things would be, a thing. And then obviously everything else that's kind of going on. And I still think like, I think in the macro sense of what is it going to take for us to get like what is the completion of this card stuff going to look like? I think we're pretty much there, and I think having even just like the first round of publication of these cards in this project will be good, and is like pretty much there. I think I have access to these I have access to them now, so I'll be finishing that today, and I think we can set a goal like basically for next week. Do you think these cards will be ready? Like that seems like plenty of time. Maybe even before next week, we can have like whether we put these things on like Medium or whatever. But I think before the next meeting, we can have the cards like on to the next stage of their life, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a good deadline. This week, let's just go like take one last pass at them and get them organized, and then let's put them on Medium to start with. That way, we can have like maybe a post where we make a call for participation. Yeah, and then we can do like a Twitter thing where we do one at a time, maybe where we say, "Here's a card," and maybe a very short description of it, and say, "If you want to learn more, go to our Medium post." The Medium post link, and then they can look at other things and look at maybe a more detailed shot of the project. We might get cutesy and have like a little image or logo associated with it, but it's really not necessary. You can just do the, just the card, maybe the top, the first box, the title, and then. And then have a link to the card so that they know kind of what to expect But yeah, I think
Yeah.
that, so it's like that sort of way with the Medium post and then the advertising on social media, and then we can advertise in other places as well. If you think about like where we might put it, there. I don't know. I'm not active on Instagram. I don't know if that's appropriate, but it's a different audience. And then even we have our LinkedIn organization, which we don't use. I just stumbled upon it back this week. I forgot that I made it, but that's something else. I think maybe it's again a different audience, but we can get participation that way.
Yeah, definitely. And I have some thoughts about Instagram. I'll discuss those in Slack. But definitely LinkedIn and potentially Instagram. Twitter's good, and also Facebook. I've been kind of returning to. I have a lot of feelings about Facebook, but using it for just sharing some professional stuff or like whatever, I'm kind of open to that. So we can have a whole. I think maybe in like the lab admin or open or somewhere we can have a discussion about social media stuff. But yes to all of that, and I think it's time to push those things to production, for sure, and even just getting feedback. Also, I wanted to say just to mention this quick. There probably should be some specific place on the website to like the actual oral main website to have these things. But I know on the Medium publication, it'll be very easy to make, on the homepage, you can create these different, I don't know if it currently is set up like this right now, but you can create these different, like categories and ways to display content on the homepage of the Medium publication. And you can just, it'll be very easy to just, set a specific tag for these posts and have all the call for involvement or all the, project proposals, whatever, in one view. That might be kind of a fun or a sexier way to present them. So just things like that come to my mind. So.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, yeah, we'll talk about that later. Follow up in the coming weeks. So, last things I wanted to talk about today would be I wanted to go over these manuscripts really quickly just to show what they look like.
Yeah.
And then I want to talk about some things, follow up on some readings and that I found interesting. So, this is the first. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the first paper that I've been working on to get into shape, to get some comments and suggestions and contributions to. So this is the Allostasis machines idea, sort of written up. I don't know if we like the subtitle. That's something we can play around with. Let me put a note on that. Change. I mean, just the title, we can fiddle with that. That's not the important thing. The important thing is the content and the focus. I have an abstract of 150 words here. This is a sort of a stab towards enactivism and embodiment. And the idea here, I think, is to make a position paper. So we're making a very strong position, and I think this is appropriate for that. Defining allostasis machines. We consider potential perturbation regimes. I may change this because it's not as descriptive as it could be. But I think that's probably a good length for the abstract, 150 words or so. And then we get into the introduction. And this is something that I think I made this claim in one of the talks for Neuromatch. The brain is an allostasis machine. And then in the group we had a discussion about this, about allostasis, especially Anson. So Anson might be interested in reading through this and giving some feedback and maybe adding some things where I think we're close to the limit, but I think we can we can change some things out if there are things that aren't as strong as they could be. But basically the idea is that you're sort of looking at this neuro-HCI interdisciplinary relationship, which is where, we talk about, say, sort of regulation in the brain, and then we're talking about like human-computer interaction, which is the idea of this workshop. We don't talk too much about an action per se, but we talk a lot about embodiment in here. I kind of go through homeostasis and then into the idea of allostasis. So, homeostasis is this, it's not static, but it doesn't lend itself to changes in state. It's more like you have a state that's regulated, and there are a lot of changes that go on regulating that single state. But then if you go to the allostasis literature, and again, I just cited from Sterling some of the things that are proposed in terms of allostasis and allostatic drive. We might add in some reference on something about allostasis and maybe emotion or something like that. But I'm not really sure how to put that in. Maybe something Anson can help with. And so then talking about the complexity of the internal state. So this is a diagram of what I'm thinking for like an allostasis machine. You have this initial condition, and you have this trajectory, which unfolds over time. And this basically is a record of the state. And so as you go from the initial condition, the state is constantly bombarded with these perturbations. And the perturbations can be delivered in different ways. And I think later in this paper, there's a discussion about how the sort of the length and the duration of these perturbations, their magnitude. And so you end up with this trajectory where you get a perturbation, you get recovery. The recovery can either be like fully back to the initial state, or there can be some hysteresis or like lack of recovery. And so then that's a new state, and then you get another perturbation and another one, and there's some recovery here. And you end up at this regulated state, which is of course a different state from the initial condition, but it's you see the sort of the dynamical trajectory of this. And so that's the idea. And so all of this paper just walks through this idea, this what I call an event-oriented trajectory of internal state. This is a close-up of like a single perturbation, and just describing like how you go from baseline to some recovered state, and that there's this perturbation with a certain magnitude, and then a recovery which can be either fully recovered to the initial state or hysteretic, which it is in this case, which means it just doesn't recover fully to that original state. And so that's what we call allostatic drive, is this recovery capacity. And so I can't remember. I should make a note that I don't know if I make that explicit in here. And so that's the basic idea of the paper. And then I think there's some examples in here of like I can't remember if it's this one or not. Oh, this is where talk about sort of the measures that might be used to measure these things. So, describing sensations in different ways and how they relate to this trajectory and all that. So, and then there's some examples here where I talk about virtual environments and neuro-HCI systems. So this is like the study of visual flow and spatial cognition. So this I get a gratuitous citation of development of Bratenberg vehicles, of course. And then there's a discussion, and that's got to be very short because we're at the page limit on this. But I mean, read through this paper and give some feedback, please. You can make corrections to grammar and to spelling and maybe rephrasing, or you can actually propose different citations or new citations. So right now the citations are a little bit, they're not really as close to, say, an activism as maybe the workshop would like. So that may be a problem, but I don't know, like, how familiar Anson and Jesse are with, like, inactivism and the citations. I don't cite, I don't even know if I cite what's his name in here. With Jesse, your favorite author on this topic, what's his name?
Sorry, I'm going to have to mute it. Varela?
Yeah, well, maybe Varela, I don't know. Maybe I do cite Varela in here, but no,
Maybe
what's his name?
Winner, but
Camaro, right?
Oh yeah, Antonio Camaro. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't really cite him in here, but that's okay. We can maybe figure out a way to put that in. But this is stuff. So the deadline for this, I think, is the 31st of January. So it's coming up, but it's I think we're just about at the page limit. I'm gonna keep this open for the next week for comments, and then after that week is up, I'm gonna start putting it into the template, which is a little bit different than what this is. This is just in a standard Times New Roman 12 single column format, but I think there's a different format for the conference, and so that may affect the page count, but I think it'll be all right. I think we're in good. I think we're just about at the limit, but it's my point is that we can. I think we're at a good place with respect to this submission. So this is the link here. I'll put it in the chat. And again, we want to. Again, it's just like we'll probably have an opportunity to. We'll probably have to do some changes to it, make some edits to it if it's accepted, because they usually suggest, and so we'll have a chance then to do it. But and then of course if it gets accepted, we'll have to do a presentation on it too. So that'll be another opportunity to contribute things that maybe we didn't talk about in the paper. So I think that's again, I think it's in pretty good shape. And then this will be good. Like if it doesn't get accepted, then we have something to work from for something else.
Yeah, I like the paper, and I got through a good amount of it, and I'm going to be going through that again, of course, this week to really flesh out some of my remarks. But I think it's good. I like that. I think that's a good. I think that's a very good. I should add that to the card actually, but that's a good. I think there'll be a lot more along this line of stuff. That's a good start.
Yeah. Anson, did you have anything to add?
Paper looks really interesting, and I definitely want to give it a read over.
Okay. Yeah, please do. So this is for the emergent interaction workshop. So I think that'll be like, if it's a position paper they're looking for, I think that's a good position. It can be pretty provocative if you think about like a lot of the work that's been done on like, especially human-computer interaction. It may not be like, in that mainstream, but I think that's what they're looking for, so that's good. So the next paper is Gibsonian information. So this is something also we've been talking about. This is for CogSci. So I think the deadline for this is like February 4th. What did I say, February 3rd? The point is it's coming up soon.
Yeah, it's the 3rd, soon. Very soon.
So again, this is our... So this is, I think it's a 6-page page limit, and there's a template for this again. So this isn't exactly the right template, but the fonts are a different font, but that's okay. We'll fix that. So this is sort of writing out all the stuff we've been talking about with Gibsonian information in a paper form. So the idea is that we have the application of information theory and ecological, psychological concepts like optic flow are commonly used to investigate human cognition. There is a latent theoretical framework that we will review in this paper. I don't know, I think that needs to be changed, but I don't know how I mean, getting the abstract right is always tough. This is particularly important for the study of computational agents and non-neuronal systems exhibiting cognitive behaviors. We introduced an approach called Gibsonian information, which is concerned with the study of an embodied observer, making a distinction between stasis and motion in dynamic environments. And then it goes through an introduction as to what sort of information, how it's been measured, and then, kind of like the standard classical information theory, and then Bayesian surprise, integrated information theory, but all those are not really relevant to sort of the sensory world. And then this is where we come in with this idea of Gibsonian information. And then this kind of talks about some more exotic approaches to this. So this is good. And then, so we talk about embodied observers. That might need a little bit more work. I think I just, some of these are just kind of like a couple sentences. But there might be, like, we could add a couple more sentences to make it sort of fill out the section. Affordances maybe more, because I think something, maybe we want to spend some more time on that. And again, like, I didn't put any citations in here, so we might want to add one at least. So let me see if I can add edit. And then that's something we can decide on. We don't have a lot of room because I think we're again up to the page, near the page limit. So this is where we get into GI as a measurable phenomenon. So I've had these slides that I've been putting into the developmental AI talk, and I think I mentioned it again in the philosophy talk. But it's basically these three areas: disjoint distributions, contingent action, and coherent movement. And so it kind of goes through all of these different types of potential measures and a description in here of what they are. And then there's a figure. I don't know where it is. I don't think I put it in here. But there's a figure that is of all these things. And those will be put in here. I think I'll probably put it about here. I don't know why I thought I had put these figure. Maybe I haven't. I haven't seen it yet. But okay, so figure one about here. And that figure one is a summary of these different areas. And then 4-channel embodiment, which is a new idea that I think I've talked about in a different. Oh, here's figure one. Okay, good. That's exactly where I want it. Because I think that's a good place for it. And then 4-channel embodiment, which is this idea of like boiling this down to an example. And I worked out a picture with a rabbit hopping around a garden, and then these four sensory channels. So you consider the rabbit hopping around and actually like engaging with its environment. And it's engaging with visual systems, with touch systems or haptics, proprioception, which is different because it monitors different parts of the body, and auditory channels. And so then we get into the 4-channel embodiment. I'll put that figure in later. And then this is just an example of multisensory embodiment. There's this congruence and incongruence. And then I don't know if we want to do a discussion on this, because I don't know what our page... I don't know. Well, we're kind of close to the page limit. So I'll make a note. Add to this or delete. Page limit constraint. Because I don't want to go... I don't want to start doing 2 paragraphs here, and then you have to put in the citations down here, and then it gets to be a little bit much. So when we put the figures in, it'll be close to 6 pages, but I will think about that. And that's something that the discussion part, maybe, we can kind of, if both of you look through the paper and have some ideas about things we can kind of discuss, like maybe your maybe things you thought that we missed or some impressions, we can synthesize a discussion. And so let me put that in the chat as well. So that again should be, if you don't have permissions, then please request them. I think I have it open, but and so the references are here. We have like 7 or 8, so we could use a few more references. And then again, like I said, like probably something on embodiment, maybe something on maybe some of these other topics. But yeah, we don't want to put too many more references in, but maybe we do want a couple more, because I think, especially in these 2 areas, affordances and embodied observers, we can put in maybe 1 or 2 more. I think affordance is worth talking about in a little bit more depth, because, I mean, I was just synthesizing what we were talking about in the group, but I think there's probably more to say about that.
Mm.
So, any comments or questions about that?
Not particularly. I think this weekend and the next with the day off on Monday, I think I'm just going to be going through a lot of these manuscripts, and it's good. It's good to see the deadlines, because there's still a lot of stuff. It's sort of like, wow, it's already here. Like, it's already, you can already feel that, you know, all those deadlines. I mean, the end of January is like just not very far from here. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Getting those.
Yeah. Anson?
I echo what Justin said. I think, look, I could probably look into affordances and how it relates to the paper, but I definitely need to give it a closer look.
Okay. Sounds good. And again, like, you know, the deadline is coming up, and then if we don't get accepted into CogSci, we can make this into a technical paper. And then, of course, there we don't have a page limit so much. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, good. So, the final thing I wanted to talk about in the meeting is a couple things that I run across in the course of talking and interacting with readings. So you saw this as Sam Gershman and Jesse's tweet. I think this is worth following up on, the history of, like, he says, when are they going to establish history for artificial intelligence departments? But really, it just needs a class, which I thought of as like, you know, yeah, they could have a class on this. We could also, like, have a series on it, where we talk maybe, you know, a couple of talks, hour-long talks, where people, or maybe 20-minute talks where people would come up with different topics in AI. So, like, a historical view of AI. So, like, you know, Jesse might do a 20-minute talk on Norbert Wiener, or maybe, you know, Anson does a talk on animats, or something like that. And, you know, we can have a collection of these talks, and, you know, it would be, because, you know, people, they talk about, like in A-Life, they talk about history actually quite a bit. If you look at the A-Life conference proceedings, you know that they have a track on history and philosophy, and you often run, you know, people are often running sort of history checks. It's healthy, I think, as a field, where they kind of go back and always look at the history. So there's the, you know, I think that's good, and we might think about that for the cognition futures, you know, futures by looking backwards. So I think that's good.
Yeah, I've definitely, I had kind of considered something like that myself, but hearing you say it, like, I kind of like the idea of, like, yes, like a 20-minute just presentation about stuff. That could be really, and doing a series of it and kind of letting it be, you know, a small collection of stuff, that might be a good idea to do. So, yeah, let's follow up on that for sure.
Yeah. So that brings me to, like, 3 things that I wanted to point to in this folder. And I won't go over these in too much detail. This is the folder. If you need permissions for that. You can ask. Not sure what it's set at now, but the first one is this paper. It's an Animal Reviews of Psychology paper. It's called Psychology is a Historical Science. And so it fits in with this theme of like history of different fields. In this case, it's talking about psychology being like taking cues from history. So the abstract says, psychology has traditionally seen itself as the science of universal human cognition, but it has only recently begun seriously grappling with the cross-cultural variation aspect. Here we argue that the roots of cross-cultural variation often lie in the past. Therefore, to understand not only how but why psychology varies, we need to grapple with cross-temporal variation. The traces of past human cognition accessible through historical texts and artifacts can serve as a valuable and almost completely unutilized source of psychological data. These data from dead minds open up an untapped and highly diverse subject pool. We review examples of research that may be classified as historical psychology, introduce sources of historical data and methods for analyzing them, explain the critical role of theory, and discuss how psychologists can add historical depth and nuance to their work. And so they're arguing for psychology becoming a historical science. And so they have this idea of weird psychology, which is where up till now a lot of psychology is focused on what they call Western industrial, people from like the United States, from the middle class, who, don't represent most of the world, but nevertheless are usually the subject pool for a lot of experiments. And so they go through that. They go through some other topics that are interesting, and then also going through historical data. So that's one approach to history that we might want to think about. It's not necessarily relevant to AI, but actually, it's good to think about, like, take a historical perspective. That leads to the second paper, which is this Waiting for the Future of Virtual Reality. And this is a paper that it's an article on VR, and along with machine learning, VR is also another field that's sort of hot right now and is always in that state of like, we're in the current state of things. Like, VR is, they're developing things, technologies now that are pretty mind-blowing, and generally people don't think about the history of it. Although there is at least like a theme in, like, people are thinking about the history of it. It's not like it doesn't exist. But in this article, he argues that despite advances of the past 4 years, VR as a means of mass entertainment still seems a ways off. What will it take to change that? And so the view here is that, VR always seems to be like on the cusp. I like this carrot dangling in front of the head-mounted display, because it's always in the future. We're always like going to get to VR, but we never do. And so we're always like kind of striving for this future, but when we get to the future, we're still kind of working on applications. And so it's like the way that people sometimes describe Brazil. It's the country of the future, and it always will be. It's like, there's this untapped potential that, we're not getting to for various reasons. And sometimes in VR, it's because of the hype. It's because of, that people, there are a lot of reasons why this might be. But they're pointing out a bunch of things about, things like unintended consequences of games. So they have this immersive game called Cyberpunk, where it started to give people seizures because there's an effect in VR that is, where you, if you introduce strobe lighting or something like that, you can give people seizures. They have the technologies, although they're coming along, are still kind of not all there. And there's no real framework in VR. It's usually just cool applications. So that's a problem. And so maybe a historical view would benefit VR. Not clear if that's the answer to solving a lot of the problems of VR, but it's not it's obviously, you know, we're always living in the sort of the future present with this technology. So, yeah, you can read that. And I don't know how much you know about VR, but you'll learn something from reading the paper. Finally, this paper, it's on the mind-expanding ideas of Andy Clark. So Andy Clark is a cognitive scientist. He's a philosopher by training. And he's been around for years, and he's written a lot of interesting books and papers. He's written about this idea about extended cognition, where, you know, we use tools, and because we use tools, we're essentially extending our brains into the environment. So, you know, that's a different view than, say, like AI, where people think, well, we're simulating this network and we're simulating intelligence. So, I mean, you know, this is something that, of course, is not something that we're reconciling with modern AI, and certainly it's a good view. I think it's pretty a solid view, and, you know, it's something you can explore with experimental psychology, but isn't necessarily something you can explore in VR, or in AI. Although if you use something like VR, or you use something like a agent-based model, you can get at these ideas a little bit more. So it goes through Andy Clark's, it's kind of one of these articles where they interview him and they talk to him about ideas, and but it's an interesting article, and I would definitely, this is something that we can talk about with respect to the cognitive futures work, because there's a lot of historical content in here, especially with talking about David Chalmers and Len Vygotsky and all these people who inspired Andy Clark. So, you know, there's a lot of that historical background here. So that's, I think, yeah.
I would also say Andy Clark was sort of, you know, a very prominent figure at the XSpec conference, was one of the places that I went, and he was, I mean, I think it's kind of like his, you know, like, I forget his role to the whole conference series in general, but I think he basically sort of like, you know, it's sort of his offspring, you know, I forget if he directly, like, make it happen himself through the XSpec series, or if he was just, you know, but he was sort of like, you know, why I'm mentioning here is because it came up in the lab meeting a couple months ago, and we have some notes on it, and we have a lot of discussion and good discussion in Slack and elsewhere around it. So there's just want to make that connection for the time being.
Okay, Anson, did you have anything to add, or?
That's fair.
I've heard Andy Clark mentioned a lot, and I think getting more into the particulars of extended cognition would probably be useful for framing a lot of different ideas.
Yeah, I would say, like, also, I know we have a big buffet of stuff that's going on in the lab, but I really would like to, all of these papers, but especially the last two about VR and the extended cognition stuff, I would really like to get a little bit more into that space, like VR as a means of, like, human-computer interaction and the things that are going on there. Like I know, I don't say I know them, but I'm just acquainted with somebody who's, like, using VR to, you know, treat some like for mental health things, and treat, like, the depression or some other, like, ways of engaging with stuff through VR environments. So I know Bradly's done work on that in the past in the lab, but I don't know if there should be, like, a VR team or, like, VR project proposal at some point, like a VR card, but I would really like to do something, maybe not immediately, because we have so much of the stuff to kind of just put to production or finish manuscripts, but I would really like to do something this year, VR related in that sense. So, yes, to be discussed elsewhere.
Yeah. And I think that's a good thing to sort of end on. And so next week maybe we'll talk about that and the cards, and maybe go through these papers again and make sure that we're meeting, getting ready for the deadline, and a lot of things to follow up on. But thank you everyone for attending the meeting. Ash left early, but that's fine. And thank you, Anson and Jesse. And if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to join us next week.